to this story. So,
okay. Well, this morning we're going to talk, and we'd like to let you know right from the beginning that the material we're going to discuss this morning is very disturbing, and we will have some pictures that are considered graphic. Do you remember Dayton Leroy Rogers?
Who can forget him?
He was considered Oregon's worst serial killer. He brutalized, he tortured, he abused women for about 15 years until he finally, his bloodlust just took over, and he started killing prostitutes. He started killing women, and it wasn't until the 8th woman was killed that he was actually apprehended. We have with us the author of a book called Bloodlust. He has taken a look at Dayton Leroy Rogers' crimes, and he's told us in this book just what motivated this man to do what he did. He is Gary King. We also welcome to our program a man who was an eyewitness to the last killing attributed to Dayton Leroy Rogers. He is Michael Fielding. We welcome them both to our program.
Good to have you here.
Good morning. Nice to have you here. Well, bring us up to speed. This is somebody that will be hard for those who were here in the area at the time to forget. But Gary, if you would, tell us a little bit about who this man was and what he wound up doing.
Well, Dayton Rogers was really, by everyone's definition, a family man and a well-respected businessman in the communities around Portland until his urge to kill took over and he began killing. There's a lot of background on him that shows that he had very similar backgrounds to other serial killers in that he was physically abused as a child.
By his father?
By his father, yes.
Who was a very strict man?
That's correct. Very religious upbringing to the point of almost, I would say, zealous. Zealous parents. They looked as people, who lived in cities that was wicked to live in large communities. So they took their children and constantly moved around in small communities. They didn't want any of the kids to bond with anyone. And, of course, this is going to play a part in what happened with Dayton, but you can't say that that's the only reason, because look at his siblings. They turned out fine.
Well, let's start from the very end and move backwards if we can. Bring us up to the last murder that he is charged with, the last murder that he was known to have committed. And this is something that actually brought him to arrest.
Sure, that would be the murder of Jenny Smith on the evening of August 6th, 1987. Dayton, at some point, went out and started looking for someone, that he could pick up, and he made the trip from his shop in Woodburn to Portland at some time before midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And he found Jenny Smith along the normal stretch of what was in Union Avenue,
mm-hmm.
And picked her up on the
Prostitute Row?
Prostitute Row, something like that.
It had been named, right?
And that's what a lot of people refer to it as, that live over there.
But we might say in this story, he'd gone there for years.
Yes.
And he was well known in that area.
Oh, yes.
So on this night, he did what?
He knew exactly where he was going. He made his trip up Union, saw Jenny standing on the corner of Northeast Wygant and Union, pulled over, and she had been with him before on two previous occasions, so she felt fairly comfortable with him.
Was aware of his strange goings-on, his fetishes, etc.
You're right.
Okay.
And so, since he hadn't harmed her previously, she had no qualms about coming over and getting in his truck. So she waved goodbye to her partner, who was waiting, nearby in a Honda, had been dozing, and left. That was the last time anyone, saw Jenny Smith until they arrived at the Denny's parking lot down on McLaughlin.
He proceeded to stab her, tried to torture her. She tried to get away. This is the area we're looking at right now. She was found naked. She was found stabbed. This is where she was, and it was right there in a parking lot. He had gotten to the point where he was so into the crime he was committing, he didn't care about people seeing, did he?
I don't think so. I don't know how he could, and to continue with the intensity that he was, the frame of mind that he was in.
Right. Michael, you come in this part of it. You were an eyewitness.
Yes, I was.
Where were you? Where did you live? Where was the location? And what did you see?
Well, I was living approximately behind the Denny's restaurant there off of McLaughlin. Was called Vineyard Lane, in a townhouse apartment. I was upstairs. I just was trying to go to sleep and heard, at the time I thought were an animal-like fight outside my window, and discovered that it was a lady screaming for her life. Next thing I heard actually was a person coming towards. When I looked out the window, I got up and looked out the window, and there was a person. I could hear the footsteps coming towards my direction, and peered out the window and noticed it was Rogers coming around the corner, and he ran underneath the street lamp with the weapon in his hand.
What did you see? You saw it was a knife right away?
Yes, I did. Well, he ran underneath a street lamp.
Is that a big knife? Like
it was a knife with a 5.5-inch blade with a tip up on it.
Okay.
How far away was he from you?
75 feet. I had walked the paces from my door to the lantern where he had ran underneath.
Why was your identification of him so important? What did law enforcement officials finally tell you about why this was critical?
Well, I didn't, to tell you the truth, I didn't know who I'd actually identified. I just, at that time, I was just like, it just happened, and I put two and two together. I heard the screams of the girl, and then I seen the knife, and I figured that, well, a girl's been stabbed, so I called the police.
How, in the book, it's fairly well described, graphically, probably what happened that night, although you don't know. Well, you know she was killed, but you go through the chain of events.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You're saying she was bound. He would tie up all his victims. And she got away at one point, and then he stabbed her and couldn't let her go because she was too. Anyway, how many screams? How long was she screaming?
From what I remember, about 2 minutes, I think. 2 minutes? A whole 2 minutes, but I heard different, like, if I remember right, I heard like somebody had his hand over her mouth, subduing her. Yeah, muffling it.
How many times, Gary, was she stabbed?
Oh, at least 11 or 12 times.
And the first one didn't kill her. I mean, he tortured. This was pure torture.
Yeah, you could look at her body during the autopsy, and you could see, marks on there that were definitely torture. They weren't intended to kill.
So in addition to Michael's identification, there was another witness. There were several other witnesses. Is that right?
Sure.
And what did they do?
Well, one by one, they started identifying this man. Nobody at the time, of course, knew who Dayton Leroy Rogers really was.
They chased him in his truck, tried to get a license plate. They got all that. Basically,
it
was just
Richard Bergio chased him all the way, down McLaughlin Boulevard.
And got his license
number, and turned that over to the police.
So it was because of the citizens' involvement that this guy was even caught.
Sure, that's right.
Thank you.
Jennifer Smith was only one of many women tortured and killed. And next we're going to meet a detective who worked on the case, and we'll find out about the discovery of 7 bodies in a Molalla forest. We'll be right back. Dayton Leroy Rogers involved several law enforcement agencies. One detective assigned to the investigation is with us this morning. He is Michael Machado. Michael, welcome this morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
What went out over the wire to all agencies was rape victims, throat slit behind Denny's restaurant on McLaughlin. Suspect, white male, 25 to 30, long brown wavy hair, possible 6'2", 260 pounds. When were you brought in?
I was brought in the same morning that the Jennifer Lisa Smith case was brought up to the sheriff's office on the 7th.
And what happened?
Primarily what happened was our agency was notified, our deputies responded to the scene, took control of the scene, and then the investigators were called in to begin the investigation.
Fortunately, you had the help of civilians who saw, chased him, got a positive identification on the license plate, the truck model, and of course on his physical description. So then with that information, you could find out who he was. When you punched that into the computer, what came up? Who was this man, and what did you have on your hands?
At the time when we were able to gather that information from the witnesses, we began to develop information on Dayton Leroy Rogers. We located an information from the vehicle license as to an address where he would live. We had deputies go out to that particular area, eventually made contact with some family members there. We gathered information as to where he was at that morning.
But he had a rap sheet. This guy was no stranger to the justice system, was he?
No, he wasn't.
Who was he? What had he done in the past?
Unfortunately, at this point, I'm not able to really go into his background due to some court resentencing information that may come up at a later time.
So you can't tell us, can we say it? Can we sit here and say what we read in the book about what this guy had been...
That would
Okay, he can't say it, but we can say it. This guy had been married before. He was abducting and torturing hitchhikers, teenage girls, prostitutes. He'd been in jail for stabbing a young girl. He really had done it all.
He faced some very serious charges that had involved violent sexual attacks and nearly fatal stabbings with many women. Anyway, you faced him. He was faced by... Were you part of that?
No, at the time I was working with gathering information from other witnesses.
Detective Turner was involved?
Correct.
Okay. They went to a workshop he had. He had a repair shop. They went in, they talked to him.
Right.
And what was he like at that point?
At that time, he was pretty docile, would answer questions from Detective John Turner, who was the one that was basically conducting the lead investigation at that time. Dayton was talking with him. Had made several phone calls during that period of time. However, in talking with Detective Turner, Dayton had made some statements to him that John knew right off the bat not to be true.
He contradicted himself.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
All right, and at that point, after the confrontation with Detective Turner, bodies started showing up, and it became apparent that this could be connected to this man. At what point did you realize that this was probably the guy who was responsible?
Well, we had been notified on the night of August 31st, which was almost a month after Dayton had been arrested for the Jennifer Lisa Smith case, that a body had been found in the Molalla Forest area.
By a hunter?
By a hunter. And I had gotten the phone call at home that night from my sergeant at the time, said I'd be going up the next day to investigate that body. So the next morning, I took a team of investigators up to the Molalla Forest area. We began our initial look into that scene, finding evidence there with information that Detective Turner had from the Jennifer Lisa Smith case. We knew within a couple of days that our killer was in jail.
And then the bodies started showing up. How many all told, and in what time span?
On the first day that we had gotten up there on September 1st, 1987, we had located 3 bodies within the first several hours that we were there. After finding the 3rd body, I realized we had a real serious situation here. First thing went through my mind was a serial killer. So we backed out of the scene and got other investigators, other personnel up there to the area. The rest of that first day, we found 2 more bodies. Then on the next day, Detective Turner and I had taken a walk to get away from the scene and the activities just to talk. About a quarter of a mile away from that location, we found 2 more bodies.
Now, these were not women who had just been killed and dumped there. They had been what?
Mutilated?
Yes, they had been mutilated. Some had had their feet cut off. One had the midsection cut. The bodies had been there for at least a couple of months, we were able to determine.
There was one piece of evidence in his workshop. He had a wood stove. The ashes in that stove were eventually sifted and checked. What was found in there?
Found in there were brads and bra hooks and belt buckles.
So he had burn clothing from his victims. Is that what happened?
Correct.
Yeah.
In your estimation and your experience as a detective, Sergeant, if you could tell us how do you sum up what this man was all about? And in your estimation, who was he? What motivated him? And why in the world did he go to such lengths to find women not only to kill, but to torture?
Well, I think he's what we might classically look at, of course, as a sexual sadist, a lust killer. An individual who finds excitement in the control of people, finds a power, especially with these women, that he would use the bondage, the torture, gives him that sense of control, that sense of power, and it's an ultimate excitement.
And in the beginning, when he was picking up prostitutes and bringing the knife out and making little cuts and biting them, that's how it started. It just progressed into something worse, did it?
Sure.
Gary?
Yeah,
He just became, his fantasies just
fed
overcame
his fantasy until he reached a frenzy, and then once the frenzy took over, there was no backing down unless the victim showed some sort of unless she fought against him in some way to overpower what he was, his control.
Right.
Control's a big issue here with these people.
Well, on this Monday morning at 9:20, where is Dayton Leroy Rogers right this minute? And is he sorry for what he's done? We'll find out when we come back. We're talking about Oregon's worst serial killer. Now, Sergeant Machado just let us know that there are about 30 to 40 living victims of Dayton Leroy Rogers. We have one of them on the phone, a woman who says she was a former prostitute. Good morning, and thank you for calling.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm here.
Okay.
What year was this?
I just wanted to say that I am actually somebody that survived Dayton Leroy Rogers. I dated him about 3 times back in late 1983. I was 19 years old, and I never felt threatened by him. He never gave me the feeling that I should fear for my life.
Would you tell us a little bit about what impression you had of him, and what were some of his requirements? You don't have to be graphic, but we get the idea.
I found him to be very personable. I found him to be very intelligent. I could sit and I could talk with him, and we talked about all kinds of things. It wasn't your standard, if you'll pardon the expression, sex for hire. I mean, we had a kind of a rapport, and I found him to be just, actually, it's really kind of scary to say, fun to be with, aside from what we did.
Did you know any of the other prostitutes that went with him that were hurt in some way?
No, I don't. I don't know any of them.
How do you feel, or how did you feel when you realized this was the guy that you had been with several times?
Actually, I was working at a job, and I had just gotten home from work, was fixing myself something to eat. I had heard about the girls that they were finding, but I didn't make the correlation in my mind that could have been him.
Yeah.
And I saw him on the news, and I had a fit. I broke down. I was running around my apartment. I was shaking. I was scared. I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, it could be me. It could be me. It could be me. And it was really scary for me.
The picture we're showing on television right now, is that exactly the way he looked when you were dating him?
That's him. I mean, he looks more angry and more vicious in this picture than he looked. His eyes, he had really pretty brown eyes, and when I knew him, they were very kind.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we're glad that you're here to call us this morning.
Yes, thank you very
call.
much. We have another call, another former prostitute. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Could you tell us? Did you date Leroy?
Yes, I did.
And what years?
I can't remember the exact year right now, but it was after a couple of the murders.
And it was after a couple of the murders?
They hadn't found out yet, but it was later after he had started killing.
And what happened in the case of your relationship with him?
Okay, I was picked up off of Martin Luther King, as of Union back then, but
Right.
I was picked up. He asked straight sex. We went to Denny's. We sat there, drank vodka and orange juice, and listen to some kind of far-out tape.
That was his pattern, wasn't it? So we understand is he drank vodka out of miniature bottles, and then he had a plastic container with orange juice, and that's how he made screwdrivers.
Right.
And that's what he drank with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. So what was the rest of the evening like?
Okay, from there we drove out to the wooded area, and then that's when he brought out the not really handcuffs, leather straps. Mm-hmm. And then he kind of cattle tied me.
Uh-huh.
Where my feet were bound behind my back, and my feet were tied too, with a hanger between them.
Were you afraid at that point?
Oh, yeah.
How did you escape without having, or were you injured?
Oh, he bit me for about 5 hours. I was bitten from
5 hours? How did you get away from him?
He left me out there in the wooded area.
Yeah.
All right, and then...
So did you report anything? I mean, did you go out with him again?
No.
Okay. All right.
All right, so...
Thank you.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
How did you finally get away, and did you warn anybody about this?
I didn't warn anybody. I went back to my hotel where I was staying, and I went in, and the guy that I was staying with took me straight to the hospital because I was just bled from head to toe. I can't remember exactly how I got away.
I wonder how many of these
Thank
victims
you for calling.
that weren't in your book. I mean, you interviewed lots of them. There are many of these such cases as this. I want to say that they parked at Denny's, and then I mentioned the fact that one of his trademarks were he carried miniature bottles of vodka and orange juice in his truck. But they don't serve that at Denny's. I don't want to make that.
Anybody who's been to Denny's knows that.
Yeah, anybody who's been to Denny's knows that.
Sergeant, you say that a lot of these women have come forward and have told you. Is this a similar story, and why didn't he kill those that did get away? Why did some survive and others didn't?
Well, what we found in talking with these women, many of them, the stories that they told were almost identical. And we found that many of these women would, as one of the callers had said, he was somewhat nice to them, and he would kind of gain their confidence, and then he would begin with some the bondage. Others might be tied up right at their first date, so to speak. But he'd gain confidence with them, and then eventually these tactics would occur. We found that with many of the women, they would resist the torture that was going on. They would fight, but after a while they would just literally give up. Some would even tell him, if you're going to kill me, just go ahead and do it and get it over with.
Today he's on death row?
Yes.
Will he be killed?
That'll be for the courts to decide.
Gary?
Who knows, really? It's a difficult one to call.
And remorse for his crimes?
None that we've heard of.
Does he even ever admit, or any allusion to the fact that he was involved?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you interview him?
No, he wouldn't consent to an interview.
Wesley Allen Dodd, you interviewed.
Yeah.
All right. That's next. When we come back, we'll find out about Gary's next book on child killer, Wesley Allen Dodd. We'll take a break. Be right back. Our guest is Gary King, who's written the book Bloodlust, and we've just discussed that. His new book coming out is about Wesley Allen Dodd. That is the cover of it, Driven to Kill. Oh, and I don't know. I don't know how you write about this stuff. Gary writes for True Detective magazine, has been for several years.
Right.
You were at the execution.
I did. My editor flew out from New York, my book editor for Driven to Kill, and we went through the process of applying to get in for the execution to take part in the lottery system. In part because of me doing the book, the fact that I'd met, Wes when he was in Clark County, and we corresponded for a while. And in part because he at one time suggested that maybe I might want to come to the execution. That was before he cut off communications with me. So we went through the process, applied, got on the list, and went into the prison. But we didn't pick the lucky number, to get in. I don't have any regrets about that.
So you didn't see it?
Didn't see the actual hanging.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this relationship that you had with Wes, as you call him. What kind of a monster could possibly do the things he did to small children?
Someone who had been building to the point of killing for a long time, at least 17, 18 years. He began when he was like 9 years old, experimenting sexually and with relatives, younger relatives. And by the time he was 14, he was actually committing molestations and rapes.
But what kind of a person and how far close to the edge do they have to be in order to wind up gradually doing what they did? Do you know of one particular thing that drove him to this when he was a child, or?
No, with Wes, it's difficult to gauge that because he did not admit to any sexual or physical abuse by either of his parents. One can only speculate that he just had a lot of pent-up anger, perhaps due to his sexual orientation. I think he
Which
had
was what?
Well, he had a relationship with one woman that I was able to find out. It was very short-lived. He denied being gay, but he was very defensive about his sexual preference.
And he was attracted to little boys.
Attracted to little boys. So I think, that played a major part. He had a lot of anger, a lot of difficulty trying to reconcile his sexual orientation. But he was basically your boy next door type of guy. You would never have suspected him unless he, was caught in the act, which he was.
It must have revolted him in some way because he did want to die, and he said that if I am turned loose, I'll go out and do it again.
Yeah, but I have some trouble with that.
Do you? In
yeah,
what way?
I do, because I feel like, he wanted to die, but maybe for a different reason. Number one, he viewed, he couldn't live in a 10-by-10 cell for the rest of his life because it kept him from doing what he really loved to do, and that's rape and murder little boys. Number two, based on the information that I was able to develop over the past 3 years, I felt like hanging to him might have been the ultimate sexual thrill, the ultimate, in reliving his final murder.
Really?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, there is going to be a book signing, and this is for the Bloodlust?
This is for Bloodlust.
Okay, this is the book about Dayton Leroy Rogers. There's going to be a book signing, and Gary King will be there tomorrow at Albertsons from 4 to 7, and it's the Albertsons on Beaver Creek Road in Oregon City. The address is 19007 South Beaver Creek Road at Albertsons. Gary, we thank you for sharing your information with us.
Thank you.
Today.
Appreciate it.
We'll take a break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.